I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents.
Meet the women pitching in to help feed a neighborhood.
They're the ones that are involved in the community, either through their children, the need to nurture and to share.
Offering spiritual care to the terminally ill.
The presence, to be in the presence of what I think is a very holy time.
And Lino Rulli gets some practical advice.
How does a person learn what God wants them to do with their life?
What am I, the answer man?
Good evening. The most recent government numbers show that about 1 in 4 of us, we actually do this. We volunteer our time. But if you think that it's equally divided between men and women, think again.
Indeed, and you know that women actually volunteer at a higher rate than men. That is the tendency anyway, as our Natalia Ortiz actually discovered when she visited one parish in Queens.
My name is Lourdes Lapola, and I work at St. Mary's Pantry as coordinator along with the other ladies here.
In the corporate world, men are often at the top of the leadership ladder. But when it comes to charitable organizations, there's a place in Woodside where the reins are in different hands, and that place is St. Mary's Food Pantry. What some people may not realize is that the majority of people who volunteer at this food pantry are women.
You know, women, I think, you know, are people who feel the call that Christ gave to take care of the poor, perhaps more than men do. Men are out in the world. Women are people who feel more, and they know the difficulties that people are in.
Father Moynihan says he's not the only one who recognizes the impact of women in the community.
If you talk to any parish priest, they will tell you that if there's something that you can't do, just look particularly helpless and some good woman will come along and do it for you.
Why do you think most of the volunteers here are women?
Our volunteers are primarily women because of their availability. They're the ones that are involved in the community, either through their children. They come together in that manner, and I think the need to nurture and to share. The men that give do so more quietly, and I think this might be too complicated. Although other pantries too have more men involved.
According to Father Moynihan, this phenomena goes back further than what some might realize.
Women in the church, and if you look at the women that appear in the scriptures, they all exhibit an extraordinary nobility. And I think that you see that nobility coming through in present-day women.
Lapola believes that it's past experience that inspires many women to nurture beyond their homes.
Or you've experienced that need as a young mother trying to figure out how to stretch a dollar or how to make something function well, and you give.
Do you think that these women are appreciated in society and in the church?
Not enough. Not enough. I think we owe great debt to them, and quite often there are those people whose praises should be sung more loudly, and they're not sung.
At St. Mary's, a chorus of appreciation rings loudly.
Here in our parish, certainly the response to the poor has been borne by our women, and I appreciate it. I know the poor appreciate it, and I know that God does too.
Well, we do have much more about food pantries in our area on our website, and we'll tell you that address in just a second. But it really is one of those things that is sort of intuitive.
Right.
Women do tend to nurture. You almost feel like they perhaps could be giving more time. But I think guys probably write more checks.
Probably. You know, I think it may be A lot of guys tend to be more behind the scenes, if you will. You know, I mean, and that's a perfect example too of how, you know, when Natalia went to cover that story, she went to just cover the food pantry, and happened to find that there were more women there, and so this story was born. So it's interesting that you know, she just kind of happened upon that and found those facts.
She noticed it. She's a good reporter.
That's right. That's why she did her job.
So if you want more information, you can head on over to netny.net/currents, and there is much more current straight ahead. When we return, a local college mourns the loss of a beloved mentor.
And from Brooklyn to Haiti, lemonade goes a long way.
Even if nobody were to see this, like, we know that God sees our efforts.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Coming up a little bit later on, Lino Rulli on the couch. But first, let's have a look at today's headlines. Brother George Larkin is being remembered as the heart of St. Francis College. The Brooklyn school announced his death at age 75 earlier today. Brother George graduated from the college in 1960 and worked in the school's admissions office for more than 35 years. The Supreme Court ruled today that a Georgia man on death row deserves a new hearing, and the Pope agrees. Pope Benedict is among those calling for Troy Davis not to be executed. Troy Davis has been on death row for 18 years after he was convicted of murdering an off-duty police officer. His lawyers say 3 people have since come forward claiming another man confessed to the killing. Besides the Pope, former President Jimmy Carter and Archbishop Desmond Tutu have also called for a stay of execution.
Well, he made the Guinness Book of World Records for being the oldest man to enroll in primary school just because he wanted to learn how to read the Bible. Stephen Kamani Marguj of Kenya has died. He was 81 years old. He'd converted to Catholicism late in life and enrolled in a primary school in 2003. Well, not as old, but Madonna turned 51 on Sunday. A day earlier, she performed in Warsaw, Poland. The concert met with vocal opposition because it fell on the Feast of the Assumption. That is one of the country's holiest days. Well, the temperatures are certainly on the rise these last few days, and in some parts of the world that means tropical storms. This is certainly the case in Haiti, a country that also has its share of political problems. All this is contributing to extreme poverty there, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. According to one study, 80% of Haitians live on less than $2 a day. Well, there is no doubt about it, though. Help is always needed, and people in our area are finding new and creative ways to lend a hand, including a family in Sheepshead Bay. They're turning lemons into lemonade and using the proceeds to give much-needed help to Haiti.
My childhood, I was a middle-class family. We had food. We didn't struggle. But I did see around me those who were struggling and those who didn't have food. I would love to go back where I was brought up and see Haiti. So in that sense, I do miss Haiti. I want to see where I grew up. I want to see where I lived. If it's still there, I would love to do that.
I have looked for years for something to do to help children. I have a heart for children. They're in a particularly vulnerable state. In the spring of 2008, I reconnected with a woman that I had known for about a decade. And she actually has a children's feeding program in Haiti in Port-au-Prince. And she feeds between 600 to 700 children twice a week. In spite of everything that really should be addressed there, you know, we really have just sort of narrowed into, you know, we know the kids need health care. We know that they need a functioning government, but what we know more than anything is they need to eat. And that's sort of what we've been trying to do.
It felt good because kids in Haiti, they don't basically go to bed on a full stomach, so it's kind of good that we're helping them go to bed on a full stomach.
Last year they were able to raise around $125, and the kids sent about 245 pounds of beans to the kids in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And this year we have a more aggressive goal. The kids do to send 1,000 pounds of food To me, it just goes to show that no matter who you are or what situation you find yourself in, every little thing that we do for other people makes a difference.
A community starts with a husband and a wife, and then they have kids, and that becomes a society. And oftentimes we tend to remain in that particular setting in life where it's just us and our family, and we forget to reach out. And I think the very fact that my wife started this and did this, I feel honored that I would have a wife who would not just think about herself and her family and her immediate family, but is willing to do what she can and involve us in participating and helping those who are less fortunate, especially those in Haiti.
If we really were to love our neighbor, if we really were to care about the poor, what that means and requires of us is that we give. And that's what we're hoping, that even if nobody were to see this, like, we know that God sees our efforts and these children are benefiting from it, and ultimately that's the reward.
And that is the Strackman family from Sheepshead Bay. We posted a little more information about the family's work on our blog. You can just head over to netny.net/currents.
Stay tuned. We have much more currents coming up straight ahead.
Coming up, comforting those who are suffering at the end of life.
It's the grace or the blessing of the moment where you see the patient is at peace.
Welcome back. Many agree, as we've seen in the news lately, that healthcare in this country is really in critical condition. Much of the recent debate has been how to best address the needs of those that are actually nearing the end of their lives.
Sure, it's something that we're all going to face eventually. Hospital chaplains see these patients up close each and every day. And we want to introduce you now to 3 people who are caring for the spiritual needs of terminally ill patients right here in New York City.
My name is Jane Mather, and my story starts from the time I was very young and lost a younger brother to childhood illness. I think because I grew up with the evidence very up close and personal of death in my family, I've never been afraid of it. I saw from the time I was little that the survivors survive, and that the people who die are still so much a part of the fabric of what's left behind, that it's not just, they don't just disappear, they're still there.
A typical day as Director of Chaplaincy Services starts between 6:30 and 7 a.m. Jane receives referrals from nurses, social workers, and doctors for sick and dying patients and their families. We asked Jane about her journey to Sloan.
What brought me to Memorial Sloan Kettering was the interest that I had in cancer care. Their inclusion of pastoral care was so profoundly exciting to me, because pastoral care is often not recognized as important. Many times sat at the bedside of a dying patient and just been there and held the hand. I think of myself as an usher. We usher people from this world into the next, and that takes tremendous patience and slowing down and not having any other agenda but just the presence, to be in the presence of what I think is a very holy time.
The reward looks like the reality of grace. It's the grace or the blessing of the moment where you see the patient is at peace. And to me, the reward is my own peace in knowing that I did what I feel God has called me to do. Maybe there is the presence of cancer of the bone, but there's healing in knowing that people care.
Sister Margaret Ottinger is Director of Pastoral Care at Hospital for Special Surgery. She, like Jane Mather, heads a team of several chaplains who are specially trained in end-of-life practices.
We have our own nurses' syllabus. We have our own chaplains' traditions of knowing what to do, or what traditions are a part of Hinduism, of Muslims, of Roman Catholics, of Protestants, when they are sick, when they are injured, when they are dying.
Lutheran Reverend George Hanzo has been a chaplain for 25 years. He now heads healthcare chaplaincy in New York City.
I worked in memorial pediatrics for almost 25 years. Worked with families who children were diagnosed with cancer, died from cancer, relapsed with cancer. But the challenge, I think, is the focus and the presence that you have to do this job well. The intensity of the contact has to be total. It's about reducing suffering, and that's a noble calling, I think. And I feel blessed to be lucky enough to have dropped into a place where I can help people suffer less.
For those who have a sort of faith that said, well, if I say my prayers, I give money to church and to charity, that somehow God will protect me from this, and then they find themselves in the midst of a cancer diagnosis and they think, gosh, I did everything right, how did this happen? The rewards are wonderful. Starting with restoring your faith in humanity. We see people at their most fundamentally human come into the hospital. We take away all the props and costumes that make us who we are out in the world and are left with raw humanity here. The gift that we are given of the people that we love and are connected to and whose lives we're woven together with. Those bonds never break. They stretch and they change, but they don't break. And just as we have to let go from this side, there are people, we're told in our faith that there are those on the other side who are welcoming with joy and singing and celebration, saying, we're so glad you're here. So being able to say those things in a gentle way, depending on the family, is, I think, part of what we're there for. It's to identify this as sacred time, but also joyful that we had the time and could share in the love of this person.
Well, three people doing some very important, and one can be at times very emotionally draining work, but it is so critical because at that point of, when you're nearing the end of your life, to have someone that you can trust and is a loving soul and companion just to validate your existence on the planet really can mean a lot.
Well, that's going to be so comforting. You may not even know these people, at all when you first meet them, if you're on either side of this. But it's just got to be so comforting to know that there is somebody there who's going to be there with you. It's great, and they do great work.
That's right, they sure do. Well, stay with us. There is much more current straight ahead.
Coming up, Lino Rulli ponders his future.
I was thinking it'd be interesting to work for maybe the paper industry.
Yeah, or perhaps you could work in the plastic industry.
So would you like paper or plastic?
Welcome back. Lino Rulli, he's just one of a kind,
He is.
And before he got here to New York and started giving us a hard time, he didn't really know where his life was headed.
Nope.
So they say. Well, as we've been telling you, he hosted a TV show actually in Minnesota before he was here called Generation Cross.
Sure did. And we've been showing, parts of that show here and there throughout the summer. A little bit light stuff for you to watch. And in this latest Lino Rulli classic, we find Lino at a crossroads, and he seeks the advice of a trusting friend, actor Bill Arnold.
I've got a little problem here. I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life after Generation Cross is off the air.
Well, you've got a few issues.
Yeah, I definitely
You should try to
do.
find someone to talk to and work through some of this stuff.
Well, I know, I need a psychiatrist.
Yeah, you do. But I could probably listen a little bit. I had a psychology minor in college.
Well, yeah, but what was your major?
Well, I didn't have one.
How'd you graduate?
Who said I did?
Then you didn't graduate?
I'm not on trial here. You're the one that needs the therapy.
I know I need therapy.
And I could offer you some unprofessional yet affordable advice.
Well, I guess it's better than nothing.
Let's give it a shot.
I'm really glad you've decided to come in and have a discussion and talk through some of your issues and get some of this stuff off your chest, and maybe that will help. So, where would you like to begin?
Well, for starters, shouldn't I be the one on the couch?
Nope, I think you're right.
All right. You know what you're doing, right? I mean, didn't you learn this stuff in class?
Yeah, I might have skipped that day. Just have a footrest. Anyway, so what's your problem?
Actually, let's not jump right into it, okay? Could we just sort of ease into the topics?
Okay, so how you doing?
All right, good. How you doing?
Good. What's your problem?
Well, the main problem is I'm just trying to figure out, how does a person learn what God wants them to do with their life?
What am I, the answer man? Why don't you ask God?
Well, I do ask God.
What does he say?
Well, that's the problem, is I'm not sure if the voice I'm hearing is from God or not.
Interesting. Fascinating. So, what does this voice sound like? Does it sound like James Earl Jones or Urkel?
James Earl Jones.
Interesting. Fascinating. So, what happens when you talk to him?
Well, the thing is, it sort of feels like a monologue.
Yeah, well, how do you begin?
Well, I open with a nose joke.
You can't find that funny.
No, but nobody does. I mean, silence after my jokes is fine. I'm used to that. But silence after prayer, that's what's a little bit frustrating, because how do I know for sure God is listening? You know, when I'm talking to you, obviously you're paying attention.
That's interesting. Go on.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I realize it's a basic fact of the faith that God hears our prayers, but it feels like sometimes I talk and no one's listening.
She's just a brick house. Hey! Fascinating. Interesting.
I realize I'm not the first person to think this way. There are people in the Bible who felt like their prayers went unanswered, but I don't know, sometimes I just feel all alone.
Fascinating. Interesting.
Well, anyways, that's why I'm here. Try to figure out what to do after Generation Cross.
Well, whatever you decide to do, I want to just say I think you have a very bright future.
Well, whatever I do, I realize it's going to take guts.
You got plenty of guts.
And, of course, it's going to take a lot of talent.
And you got plenty of guts.
You know, I'm thinking maybe I could work for like a big industry. I was thinking it'd be interesting to work for maybe the paper industry.
Yeah, or perhaps you could work in the plastic industry.
Or maybe both. So would you like paper or plastic? So, well, that's one option, but then I was thinking maybe I'd like to get into politics.
Really? I had a minor in college in political science.
Oh, what was your major?
This is not about me. You're the one on the couch. And besides, you don't know the first thing about politics or world affairs.
Well, actually, I was reading this newspaper article about the Shiites and how they...
Oh, please. Yeah. Lino, you don't know the difference between Shiite and Shinola.
Well, that's true. All right, politics is out. But I have always liked animals. Maybe I could work at the zoo.
You got to get the anxiety down a little bit. I mean, come on, you're a mess. I mean, you got to just put your faith in God and just trust Him. I mean, that's central to our Christian faith. I mean, it's everywhere. It's even on the money we have. In God we trust.
The problem is I don't have much money, so I don't have the constant reminder. I got a rubber band to keep the money in, but I don't know. It's one thing to say let go and let God. It's another thing to really let go. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I sort of see what you're saying. I think, like it says in Psalm 37:4, take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. So I think all you have to do is trust in Him, be patient, wait upon Him, and go talk to Him anytime you want, because He's always there for you, and He always listens, and He is never bored with you, unlike me.
So, I mean, maybe we should thank Bill Arnold, right?
Perhaps.
He might very well be the reason we're lucky enough to have Lino here with us on Currents today. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to be psychoanalyzing Lino at all, but I think that we probably do owe a little bit of thanks.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a lot of fun. I mean, that was like one-liner after the other. But obviously the point that Lino's trying to make on this is, how do you feel as though you're being heard when you're actually speaking to God and you're trying to, find your way, even if it is here to Currents at Brooklyn and all of that. Eventually, at the time, he didn't know that. And I think a lot of us are in that situation where you don't really know.
Yeah, and his friend Bill there was saying one of the big things about it, and it is one of the most difficult things to have, and that's patience. Yeah. I know, I mean, today we kind of, it's a push-button age, we kind of want everything instantly, and God doesn't always work on our schedule.
Faith.
That's right.
You gotta have it.
That's right. Wasn't that a song?
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, as you may also know, Lino not only works right here at Currents, he's also the Catholic guy on Sirius Satellite Radio. You also might know that I used to work in radio as well. In Atlanta, where I was previously from. I was on the radio. Well, tomorrow I actually visit some familiar territory. I hang out with the guys from, and gals too, from the Busted Halo podcast. All that and more coming up tomorrow on Currents.
And I didn't do radio, but remember, you can always watch us online. I've done a lot there. You can go to netny.net/currents, and there you can see clips of the show, check out our blog, Riding the Wave. You can also let us know what you think. You can send us an email at dropusaline@netny.net. So, pardon me, got a little frog in my throat now, too. Thanks so much for watching. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Francesca Maxime.
That frog thing seems to be going around. I'm Matt McClure. Have a great night.